Earth stayed quiet for 230 years. Then they declared and everything changed. Part 1. For 230 years, Earth said nothing. Not a whisper, not a signal, not even a stray radio wave drifted past the edge of its solar system. After the year 2147, when the last colony ship returned and the final deep space antenna was powered down, humanity vanished from the galaxy's view. Other worlds moved on, new empires rose, old wars were forgotten. Earth became a myth, a cautionary tale told in spacer bars and academy lectures about a species that once reached for the stars, then pulled back into the dark. Out near the edge of known space, where the stars thinned and the void stretched cold and endless, the freighter Ceres Dawn cruised through the quiet. It was an old ship, patched more times than its log could count, carrying crates of machine parts and nutrient paste from the mining outpost of Helios 9 to a repair station orbiting Proxima Centauri. At the controls sat Leo Grant, a man in his late 30s with tired eyes and a calm voice. He'd been flying cargo routes since he was 20, never asking for glory, just enough credits to keep flying. That day started like any other. The ship hummed softly. The stars outside were fixed and distant. Leo sipped lukewarm coffee from a dented mug and checked his course. Everything was normal until it wasn't. A chime sounded from the comms panel. Not the usual ping of a scheduled update or a relay handshake. This was different, sharp, insistent. Leo frowned and tapped the screen. The signal was narrowband, encrypted in a way he hadn't seen before, but not unbreakable. It repeated every 30 seconds, clean and precise like a heartbeat. He ran a quick decode using an old Concorde protocol key, something he kept around more out of habit than hope. To his surprise, the message opened. Earth reclaims its voice. All prior treaties void. Sovereignty reasserted. Leo stared at the words. He read them again. Then a third time. His hands didn't shake, but his breath caught in his throat. Earth. That word hadn't meant anything real in generations. Most people thought the planet was dead, swallowed by climate collapse, civil war, or some silent plague no one had ever confirmed. The few history files that mentioned Earth spoke of it as a lost cradle, a place too broken to save. But this message, it wasn't a plea, it wasn't a cry for help. It was a declaration. Leo checked the origin point. The signal came from Sol system, from Earth itself, not a relay, not a ghost echo from a dead satellite. The coordinates were exact, the timing perfect. Someone was transmitting from the surface or near it. He hesitated only a moment before routing the data through the nearest long-range relay buoy. It would take 6 hours to reach the nearest hub, and from there the news would spread like fire through dry grass. He knew what would happen next. Governments would scramble. Militaries would go on alert. Scholars and conspiracy theorists alike would light up every network in the sector. But for now, in the quiet cockpit of the Ceres Dawn, Leo was alone with the message. He played it again. The voice was calm, genderless, speaking in standard Concord tongue but also layered with older dialects. English, Mandarin, Arabic, Russian, each version overlapping like echoes in a stone hall. It felt ancient and new at once. He leaned back in his chair and looked out the viewport. The stars didn't seem so distant anymore. They felt like eyes, watching, waiting. Back on the relay hub at Proxima Station, the signal arrived right on schedule. Within minutes, it was flagged by an automated filter as Historical Anomaly, Priority Review. A junior analyst named Nina Patel, barely out of training, was the first human to see it after Leo. She almost dismissed it as a prank or a glitch. But the encryption signature matched pre-retreat Terran protocols, something her professor had once called digital fossils. She sent it up the chain. By the end of the shift, the entire station was buzzing. News feeds lit up with speculation. Was it real? Was it a hoax? Had someone found an old archive and rebroadcast it as a joke? But the signal kept coming, steady, unbroken. Across the sector, others heard it too. A research vessel near Tau Ceti, a smuggler skirting the Kessel, drift. Even a Concorde patrol cruiser on routine watch picked it up and reported it as possible hostile. Reactivation, no one knew what to do. Earth had been gone so long that most star charts didn't even mark Sol as inhabited anymore. Insurance policies didn't cover travel there. Navigation AIs warned pilots to avoid the system as unstable and unmonitored. Now, without warning, it was speaking again. And it wasn't asking. Leo didn't sleep that night. He reran the signal through every filter he had. Checked for hidden codes, timestamps, metadata. Nothing. Just the same sentence over and over. He thought about his grandmother who once told him stories about Earth. Green hills, oceans that went on forever. Cities that glowed at night like fallen constellations. He'd always assumed those were fairy tales. Now he wasn't so sure. He made a decision. Against company policy, against common sense, he adjusted the Ceres Dawn's course. Not by much, just enough to swing wide around Proxima and set a slow, quiet vector toward Sol. He wouldn't enter the system. Not yet, but he wanted to see it for himself. As the freighter turned, the stars shifted outside the window. Somewhere far ahead, behind layers of silence and time, a planet waited, and for the first time in over 2 centuries it was no longer alone. Earth stayed quiet for 230 years. Then they declared, and everything changed, Part 2. The message from Earth spread faster than anyone expected. Within days, it reached every major system in the galactic conquered. News channels replayed the declaration on loop. Scholars debated its meaning. Military commanders ran simulations. Most agreed on one thing: if Earth was truly awake again, the balance of power had just shifted in a way no one could predict. On the colony world of New Haven, nestled in a quiet arm of the galaxy far from old human territories, Mara Lynn sat in her office overlooking the capital city of Viridia. She was 34, with sharp eyes and a quiet way of speaking that made people listen. Her ancestors had left Earth 3 generations before the Great Retreat, part of the first wave of off-world settlers. Though her people still called themselves human, they had built their own culture, laws, and identity over centuries. To them, Earth was a distant memory, a name in history books, not a home. When the signal arrived, Mara was summoned to the Conquered Diplomatic Council. She was one of the few with human heritage and the only one who had studied pre-retreat Terran history in depth. The other delegates, tall insectoid Centauri, scaled Virelians, and soft-voiced Lumari, looked to her for answers she didn't have. "Is this a trick?" asked Elder Core of the Virelian bloc, his voice low and rasping. "Or a warning?" Mara shook her head. "I don't know. But Earth didn't broadcast this to one system. They sent it everywhere. That means they want to be heard. Or they want to provoke us," said a Zenthari delegate, clicking her mandibles. "The Terrans were aggressive once. They took worlds without asking." "That was over 200 years ago," Mara replied, "and those Terrans are gone. If Earth survived, they're not the same people." But doubt hung thick in the chamber. The Conquered had spent decades stabilizing the region after the collapse of the old human colonies. Allowing Earth to re-enter the galactic stage could unravel everything. While the Council argued, the Conquered High Command acted. Admiral Kyle Vor, a battle-scarred commander from the reptilian Drask species, was ordered to assemble a reconnaissance fleet. His orders were clear: approach Sol system, gather data, and under no circumstances engage unless fired upon. Kyle respected the order, but not the sentiment. He remembered stories from his grandfather about human warships that struck without warning during the border skirmishes. To him, silence wasn't peace. It was patience. Mara requested to join the mission. The Council refused at first, but she insisted. "If Earth speaks, they'll want to see a human face, even if it's not theirs," she said. Reluctantly, they agreed. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, others moved too. Independent ships, scouts, historians, thrill-seekers began charting courses toward Sol. Among them was Leo Grant, still aboard the Ceres Dawn. He hadn't told his company where he was going. He'd simply rerouted, citing engine diagnostics and delayed delivery. He knew he'd be fired if caught. But something in that message pulled at him like gravity. Back on New Haven, Mara packed a small bag. She took only a few things: a data chip with old Earth songs, a photo of her great-grandmother standing in a field of wheat, and a simple silver locket with no picture inside. Just empty space, like the silence Earth had kept for so long. The Conquered fleet assembled at the edge of the Helios Drift. 5 ships in total, 2 scout frigates, 1 science vessel, a communications relay, and Kaelvor's command cruiser, the Iron Maw. Sleek, armored, and bristling with sensors, it was built for war but flying under a flag of observation. Mara boarded the science vessel, the Wayfinder. Its captain, a gentle Lumari named Orin, greeted her with a soft hum of welcome. "We do not seek conflict," he said, his voice like wind through glass chimes. "Only understanding." "I hope Earth feels the same," Mara replied. The fleet jumped to FTL. The journey to Sol would take 12 days at safe speeds. During that time, Mara studied everything she could find about Earth's last known state. Climate collapse, resource wars, failed AI uprisings. The official records painted a picture of a civilization that chose isolation over extinction. But why now? Why speak after 230 years of silence? Vor broadcast daily briefings to all ships. "Assume nothing," he warned. "Trust nothing. Earth may appear dormant, but dormancy can hide teeth." On day 9, the fleet dropped out of FTL at the outer edge of the Sol system. The Oort cloud stretched ahead icy and still. Sensors swept the void. At first, nothing. Then faint energy signatures too regular to be natural began to appear near the orbit of Neptune. "They've got outposts," said a technician on the Wayfinder. Not military, but active. As they moved inward, more signs emerged. Old satellites, long thought dead, now pulsed with low-power signals. Navigation buoys flickered to life as the fleet passed. None attacked. None hailed them. They simply watched. By the time they reached the asteroid belt, tension filled every ship. The sun glowed ahead, steady and familiar, and there, third from the star, was Earth. Blue and white, wrapped in clouds, turning slowly in the light. It looked peaceful, beautiful, alive. Then the sensors screamed. A massive structure hung in geosynchronous orbit above the Pacific Ocean, black as space itself, perfectly smooth, shaped like a ring over 20 kilometers wide. It emitted no heat, no radiation, no communication, but it bent light around it in strange ways, like a lens made of shadow. "What is that?" Mara whispered. No one answered. From the ring, a single ship emerged, small, sleek, no weapons visible. It flew straight toward the conquered fleet without hesitation. Admiral Vor ordered all ships to hold position. No weapons charged, no shields raised. Just watch. The human vessel stopped 1,000 kilometers from the Iron Maw. A voice came through on open channel, calm, clear, speaking standard Concord. "This is Daniel Shaw of Earth. We see you. We've always seen you. State your purpose." Mara's breath caught. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't a greeting. It was a question and an assertion all at once. Vor didn't answer right away. He stared at the image of the small ship on his screen, then at the silent ring behind it. For the first time in his long career, he felt something unfamiliar, uncertainty. On the Wayfinder, Mara stepped forward. "Let me speak," she said. Orin nodded. She keyed the comm. "This is Mara Lynn of New Haven. We came to listen." A pause. Then Daniel Shaw's voice returned, softer now. "Good. Because Earth has been listening for a very long time." And with that, the silence that had lasted 230 years finally began to break. Earth stayed quiet for 230 years. Then they declared and everything changed. Part 3. The small ship from Earth hung in space like a question mark against the stars. No weapons lit up, no shields flared. It simply waited. On the bridge of the Wayfinder, Mara Lynn held her breath. She had spoken, and now Earth had answered, not with force, but with presence. That alone told her more than any history file ever could. Admiral Vor finally broke the silence. "This is the Galactic Conquered Fleet. We come in peace. We seek only to understand your declaration." From the human vessel, Daniel Shaw replied, "Peace is not declared. It is practiced. You've practiced it well by coming without guns drawn." That's a start. His words were plain, but they carried weight. Kale gave a slow nod. He ordered a data channel opened, secure but unencrypted. Earth accepted instantly. Within minutes, schematics, sensor logs, and even live feeds from the ring began flowing. Not as demands, but as offerings. Mara watched the data stream on her screen. The ring wasn't a weapon. It wasn't a shipyard or a power station. It was something else entirely. Scientists on the Wayfinder called it a quantum resonance anchor. It didn't move through space. It tuned into it. Like a radio picking up whispers from across the galaxy, the ring let Earth listen, not just to signals, but to the fabric of reality itself. "How is this possible?" Mara asked aloud. "Because we stopped trying to conquer space." came Daniel's voice over the comm, as if he'd heard her. We learned to listen to it instead. The Concorde fleet stayed at a respectful distance while a shuttle from the Wayfinder carried Mara and 2 scientists to the human ship. As she stepped aboard, she expected cold metal and harsh lights. Instead, she found warm wood panels, soft lighting, and air that smelled faintly of rain and soil. Daniel Shaw stood waiting. He was in his 40s with calm eyes and calloused hands. He wore simple clothes, jeans and a gray shirt, and offered no salute, no title, just a handshake. "You're not from Earth," he said. "No," Mara replied. "My people left long before the retreat." He nodded. "But you kept the stories." "Some of them." He led her to a small observation deck. Through the window, Earth filled the view. Blue oceans, swirling clouds, green land masses. Cities glowed at night, but not with the harsh glare of old industrial hubs. These lights were gentle, like fireflies in a field. "We never died," Daniel said. "We just stopped shouting." Mara wanted to ask 100 questions. Why hide? Why now? What happened in those 230 years? But she sensed that answers here weren't given. They were earned. Back on the Concorde ships, tension remained. HFY War trusted nothing he couldn't measure. He ordered passive scans of the ring, careful not to provoke. The results confused his analysts. The structure bent gravity in ways that defied known physics. It emitted no energy, yet it influenced nearby objects as if it had mass far beyond its size. One technician joked it was a hole in the universe wearing a suit. Meanwhile, news of the encounter spread. Independent ships like Leo Grant's Ceres Dawn arrived at the edge of the system. They weren't part of the conquered. They came out of curiosity, hope, or fear. Earth didn't turn them away. Instead, automated beacons guided them to safe holding orbits, broadcasting calm instructions in dozens of languages. Leo watched from his cockpit as a small drone approached his ship. It carried no weapons, only a data chip. He plugged it in. A message appeared. "Welcome, observe, do not interfere." He smiled. It wasn't hostile, it was polite on Earth's ship. Daniel showed Mara a live feed from Mars. Red dust storms rolled across ancient plains, but among them stood domes, green, alive, humming with activity. "You still hold Mars," Mara said. "Surprised, we never left," Daniel replied. The Concorde assumed it was abandoned after the retreat, but we maintained it in silence. Grew food, raised children, studied the stars. Mara's mind raced. The Concorde had recently approved a plan to colonize Mars, calling it unclaimed territory. They'd even sent survey teams. Earth's declaration wasn't just about sovereignty, it was a warning. "Why not say something sooner?" she asked. "Because you weren't listening," Daniel said simply. "You called us dead. You erased us from your maps. We let you, until you tried to take what was never yours to claim." His words stung, but they were fair. Later, Mara asked about the ring. Daniel explained that after the retreat, Earth's greatest minds stopped chasing faster ships or bigger bombs. They turned inward. They studied quantum entanglement, consciousness, the hidden links between matter and thought. Over generations, they built tools that didn't fight the universe, but harmonized with it. The ring was the result. It didn't shoot lasers or launch missiles. It could, however, make a warship's targeting system forget its own purpose, or cause a reactor to cool itself without command, or turn encrypted data into plain text across light years. "It's not magic," Daniel said. "It's attention. We learned to pay attention to the quiet parts of reality that everyone else ignores." Mara thought of her grandmother's stories, of forests that whispered, of oceans that remembered. She'd thought them poetry. Now she wondered if they were physics. As the hours passed, trust grew slowly. Mara shared data from New Haven, crop yields, medical advances, cultural records. Daniel listened, asked thoughtful questions, and in return, offered glimpses of Earth's quiet rebirth. Cities powered by sunlight and wind, schools where children learned empathy alongside math, forests regrown where deserts once spread. It wasn't a utopia. There were still struggles, mistakes, losses. But there was no hunger, no war, no race to dominate. When Mara returned to the Wayfinder, she carried more than data. She carried understanding. HFY War met her on the bridge. "Is it real?" he asked. "Yes," she said. "And they're not bluffing." He stared at the ring on the view screen. "Then we are not the hunters here. We are the guests." For the first time, the fleet relaxed. Ships powered down non-essential systems. Pilots opened private channels to share what they'd seen. Even Kale allowed a small delegation to request formal talks with Earth. Daniel agreed, but only if the talks happened on Earth's terms. No fleets in orbit, no demands, just voices speaking plainly. Mara knew the Concorde would resist. Old powers don't surrender control easily, but she also knew something had already changed. Earth had spoken, and the galaxy was finally learning to listen. Earth stayed quiet for 230 years. Then they declared and everything changed. Part 4. The talks began not in orbit, not on a warship, but on the surface of Earth itself. A small group from the Concorde, Mara Lynn, Admiral Kale Vor, and 2 scientists, were invited to land near the coast of what was once called California. Daniel Shaw met them at the edge of a green field, where wildflowers swayed in a soft breeze and the air smelled of salt and pine. There were no guards, no scanners, no show of force. Just a man in simple clothes and a quiet welcome. They walked to a low building made of wood and glass nestled among trees. Inside, sunlight streamed through wide windows. Tables held fruit, bread, and water. No screens, no weapons, no uniforms. Kale kept his hands loose at his sides, his instincts wary, but even he could feel the absence of threat. It wasn't staged. It was real. Over a meal of roasted vegetables and fresh bread, Daniel spoke plainly. He told them how, after the last colony ship returned in 2147, Earth's leaders made a choice. Not to hide, but to heal. The wars, the pollution, the endless race for more had nearly ended them. So they stopped. They tore down old systems that fed greed and built new ones that fed community. They turned their best minds not toward conquest, but toward balance. We didn't give up technology, Daniel said. We gave up the idea that more power means more safety. True safety comes from understanding, not control. Mara listened closely. This wasn't the story taught in Concorde academies. There, Earth was painted as a failed experiment, a species that burned bright and fast, then collapsed under its own weight. But here, in this quiet room, she saw something else. A civilization that had chosen a harder path and walked it for centuries without fanfare. Kale asked the question burning in him. Why now? Why break silence after 230 years? Daniel looked out the window at the ocean. Because you were about to take Mars. The Concorde had approved the Mars initiative just 6 months earlier. Officially, it was a scientific mission. Unofficially, it was the first step toward claiming the planet as neutral territory, effectively erasing Earth's claim. Survey drones had already been sent, construction plans drafted. You called it abandoned, Daniel said, but we never left. We've had people there the whole time, growing food, studying the soil, raising families. We stayed quiet because we didn't want trouble. But when you moved to take it, we had to speak. Mara felt a chill. The Conquered hadn't known, or perhaps they had chosen not to believe. Either way, Earth's declaration wasn't aggression. It was defense. Later, Daniel took them to see the ring, not from space, but from a control center hidden beneath a mountain. The room was calm, lit by soft blue panels. No alarms, no flashing lights. Just a few people watching streams of data that looked more like music than science. This is how we listen, Daniel said. The ring doesn't shoot. It resonates. Everything in the universe vibrates. Atoms, light, thought. We learn to tune into those vibrations, not to control them, but to understand them. One of the scientists from the Conquered, a Lumari named Tira, leaned forward. You can influence events. From here, not force, Daniel corrected. Suggestion. Like whispering to a river to change its course. If the river is already leaning that way, it listens. He gave an example. A week earlier, a Conquered patrol ship near Alpha Centauri had suffered a sudden but harmless glitch in its weapon system during a drill. No damage, no injury. Just a reset, that was us, Daniel said. A nudge, to show we can reach you, even when you don't see us. Kyle's scales tightened. You disabled a warship. We reminded it that peace is possible, Daniel replied. There's a difference. Back at the coastal house, the group sat in silence for a long time. The sun dipped toward the horizon, painting the sky in gold and rose. Mara thought of New Haven, its clean streets, its orderly life. It was peaceful, yes, but built on rules, borders, and the constant fear of what lay beyond. Earth had no borders in orbit, no fleets. No fear. How do you protect yourselves? Kale finally asked. Daniel smiled. By making attack pointless. If your weapons won't fire, your ships won't jump, your data turns to truth, what good is war? It wasn't invincibility. It was irrelevance. War required certainty of targets, of systems of cause and effect. Earth had learned to live in the spaces between those certainties where control slipped away like water through fingers. Mara understood now. Earth hadn't hidden because it was weak. It had hidden because it was waiting to see if the galaxy would grow wise enough to talk instead of fight. That night they slept in simple rooms with open windows. No guards, no locks, just the sound of waves and wind. The next morning, Mara asked Daniel if Earth would rejoin the galactic community. "We never left," he said. "We just stopped shouting over the noise. Now that you're listening, we'll speak when needed, but we won't join your councils, sign your treaties, or play your games. We're done with that," she nodded. It made sense. Earth wasn't seeking power. It was offering a different way to exist. Before they left, Daniel gave each of them a small stone, smooth and warm to the touch. "It's from our mountains," he said. "Hold it when you doubt whether peace is possible. It remembers." As their shuttle lifted off, Mara looked down at the green and blue world below. No cities blazed with neon. No armies marched. Just life, quiet and steady. And for the first time she believed that silence could be the loudest voice of all. Earth stayed quiet for 230 years. Then they declared and everything changed. Part 5. The Concorde fleet left Sol system 3 days after the talks ended. No treaties were signed. No flags exchanged. No formal agreements etched in data or stone. But something deeper had shifted. The ships carried not just reports and sensor logs, but a new kind of uncertainty. One that didn't come from fear, but from wonder. Back on New Haven, the council met in emergency session. Mara Lynn stood before them not as a delegate, but as a witness. She spoke without notes, her voice steady. She told them of the quiet cities, the listening ring, the man named Daniel Shaw who offered bread before answers. She described how Earth didn't threaten, didn't demand, didn't even raise its voice, and yet in doing so had changed everything. Some council members were angry. "They hold power they won't explain," said a Zenthari elder. "That is dangerous. More dangerous than assuming they were gone," Mara replied. "They let us believe that for over 2 centuries. They could have struck at any time. Instead, they waited until we almost took Mars. They gave us a chance to choose differently." Admiral Cale Vore, once the most skeptical of all, now spoke in favor of restraint. "Earth does not fight like we do," he said. "They do not need to. Their silence was their shield. Their voice is their boundary. Cross it, and you will not be destroyed. You will simply find your own weapons turning to dust in your hands." After long debate, the Concord made a decision. They would recognize Earth's sovereignty over the Sol system, including Mars and all inner planets. They would withdraw all survey teams, cancel the Mars initiative, and issue a formal statement acknowledging Earth's right to remain independent. In return, Earth asked for only one thing: that the Concord never again assume silence means absence. The message went out across the galaxy. At first, many doubted. Rumors spread that Earth had tricked the Concord, or that the whole thing was a bluff. But then strange things began to happen. A pirate fleet near the Orion Spur tried to hijack a supply convoy. As they powered up their weapons, every targeting system froze. Not damaged, just blank, as if they had forgotten what violence was for. The pirates fled, confused and shaken. On a corporate mining world, encrypted files detailing illegal slave labor suddenly appeared in public data streams, unlocked and readable by anyone. No hackers claimed credit. No breach was found. The files simply opened. Even the Concord's own war games began to fail in odd ways. Simulated missiles veered off course. Communication channels filled with old Earth music, gentle piano, soft voices singing in forgotten tongues. No one could trace the source. It became clear Earth wasn't attacking. It was reminding. Leo Grant, still aboard the series Dawn, watched these events unfold from a safe distance. He never entered Sol system. He didn't need to. He'd seen enough from the edge. One night he played the old Earth song Daniel had sent with the data chip, something called Here Comes the Sun. As the melody filled his cockpit, he realized he was crying. Not from sadness, but from hope. Mara returned to her home in Viridia. She planted a small garden in her yard, using seeds Daniel had given her, wheat, tomatoes, and something called lavender. She didn't know if they would grow in New Haven's soil, but she tried anyway. Every morning she held the smooth stone he'd given her and remembered the sound of waves on an Earth beach. The galaxy did not change overnight. Wars still flared in distant sectors, greed still drove empires. But a new idea had taken root. That power did not have to mean force. That silence could be strength. That a species could choose to heal instead of conquer, and still survive. Earth itself remained quiet. No broadcasts, no fleets, no ambassadors sent to other worlds. But the ring stayed in orbit, humming softly, watching, listening. Ships that passed near Sol reported strange calm, a sense of being seen, not judged, just known. Some pilots left offerings, a poem, a child's drawing, a recording of rain on their homeworld. Earth never responded, but the offerings were never lost. They simply vanished into the ring's shadow as if accepted. Years later, historians would call this moment the turning. Not a war, not a treaty, but a shift in understanding. The galaxy had spent centuries measuring strength by weapons and territory. Earth showed that true strength was the ability to walk away from both, and still stand. On a clear night, if you stood on New Haven and looked toward the Sol system, you saw nothing unusual. Just another star among millions, but those who knew better would pause, lower their voices and whisper a single word: Earth. And somewhere deep in the quiet heart of that blue-green world, people lived. They grew food. They taught children. They watched the stars not as targets but as neighbors. They did not seek to rule the galaxy. They had already won something far greater: peace. Not as the absence of war, but as the presence of choice. And in the end, that was enough.